Hey everyone, it's Jeff Fisher of High School Football America, joined by Roman Oben, who may have the distinction of having the longest list of things I'm going to tell you about him here in just a couple of seconds. He's the NFL Vice President of Football Development. He's a coach for the St. Peter's football program there in Jersey, ranked number 26 in the High School Football America 100. He is a Super Bowl champ, NFL legend, husband, father, a lot of other things there. That's a pretty long list, but thanks for joining me today, Roman.
No, my pleasure. And it's always good to speak to you and work with you formally over the last 2 years. But yeah, this is definitely the busy time of the year for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I love it. And maybe that's where I'm going to start with the first question for you. You got that long list, right? You probably need about 28 hours in a day. But going back to when you first started in football and through the league and all that, how does playing football, which you did as your past life, help you in everyday life with any of those topics that I talked about? Husband, father, NFL, guy in the executive office and all that.
Yeah, well, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't tell a story about how I, came to this country. I was born in Cameroon, which is in the Central African Republic. Grew up in DC with a single mom, and I think playing football really gave me the confidence that I needed. I didn't speak English when I came to the States. I had learned the new language and getting picked on for your accent and all that stuff. And so something happens around middle school, you have a little growth spurt and, you start playing football and start getting sports. And that's just about the right time where I kind of grew in my confidence. But I think, realistically, the things that we learn from the game and from football, sometimes you don't realize it until you look back. So dealing with the complexities, a playbook and managing yourself, managing your schedule, being a student athlete, there's value in that. And I think not everyone takes all those skills to heart and becomes successful afterwards, but more people do than not. And so I still say, the high school football coach is the most significant and influential person in a young man or woman's life who played the sport, at least in varsity high school. So that's why I still help coach, my kids. And I'm on the sidelines at St. Peter's prep games. We're coming down the stretch of our competitive stretch here with some of the games that we've got coming up in our league and our division. But it's good to see the confidence develop of a kid who wasn't really good at something, gets better at it, and then you see that confidence grow throughout the season. And that's something that you can't get in a video game. That's something you can't get anywhere else, in my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt about that. We can go many different directions here. I'm going to try and hit all the topics in the time that we have. Let's start with the job at the NFL right now. Football development, it sounds like a big overall title. I know what you and I have done over the last 2 years, but talk a little bit to the people watching this, exactly what your job is there and how what you're doing to promote this great game of ours.
Well, first, I think we have to talk about the responsibility that the NFL has. So there's the game on Sundays that we all love, and whether it's Pat Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or all the new young stars and especially don't forget about the guys on defense as well, all this stuff, Aaron Donald and those sort of guys, and that obviously drives the game and the fan interest. But there's also a trickle down effect that the NFL has, and when you talk about how the game is advanced, technology, rules, best practices. All those things do trickle down. They definitely do at college, but then at the high school level, every single state institution, state association kind of regulates themselves and officiating. Some of those things are based on things that trickle down from the National Football League. So my responsibility and my staff is just to make sure that we're really galvanizing the football community through our 32 clubs, all of our partners, whether it's, Riddell, Wilson, Gatorade, whomever, Subway, in addition to football organizations like Pop Warner, American Youth Football. I think it's no surprise that football is really taking it on the chin, no pun intended, with the messaging about injuries and concussions and those sort of things. And I don't think you should lead any discussion about football with the injuries, because it would be unfair to every other sport that deals with the same thing. But I think we do research on participation, and we work with the health and safety. We work with marketing on the right messaging, work with PR. There was a case pre-pandemic, there were 7 under 14 or under a certain age in those states. So working with our Capitol Hill office in DC. So we do a lot. There's also our NFL events. So anytime you watch the draft or you watch the Monday Night Football game and you see a high school team of the week or a high school coach getting celebrated or coach of the week, some of those things, the Don Shula Coach of the Year. We have a lot to do with that. And again, just making sure there are different touch points across the board on how we talk about the game, how we talk about the future of the game, and how we just integrate it into what's going on within the larger landscape of the National Football League.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've done over the years of doing this, and I do it with every high school coach that I have, whether it's on a video interview or a podcast, is try to talk about the game has never been safer. And you touched on, some of the bad points and all that. But I would love for you, especially since you are a coach right now at the high school level, to talk about why the safety is probably at its best it's ever been right now.
Well, I think if you look at the way the helmets were made, if you look at the technology that's gone into the research, if you look at the way the game is taught, you're throwing the ball 75% of the time, 80% in certain cases. You're running the ball 75, 80% of the time, let's say 20 years ago. So when a game that's gotten more athletic, that's gotten more perimeter focused, a lot of spread, a lot of shotgun. I remember in high school, you asked the center to do a shotgun snap, and he was going to start crying and just quit. Now these centers can't go under center. It's a big deal to break a huddle now. And so to see the way the game has evolved, we have to have a different discussion about the way the game is now versus my generation, your generation, whatever generation, so that we can educate the moms and parents about the game, not only being safer, because we don't love to use that term, but we like to say that it's about advancing player protection, and every sport takes responsibility for that. Soccer does it, lacrosse does it, basketball, obviously. And again, you don't want to lead the discussion on football with medical-led discussions, because you're walking into 3rd and 15, you're walking into this anxiety about injuries. And I think every sport assumes a certain amount of risk. Football is no different. But I will say, some of the early work I did in this building, and you saw lacrosse remove body checking at a certain extent. You saw soccer remove heading. You saw some of the rules in basketball, the hard fouls. All those things were done because of what football was doing and the conversation on injuries that football was absorbing. So we still have to deal with the conversation, the negative health and safety discussions early on. We're seeing that make a turn, but other sports were able to do it, playing the same sport 10 months of the year and all these tournaments, but they were able to make rules without the criticism. So I think when you're the number one sport in the world, in my opinion, when you're the number one sport in the world, at least in the United States, you've got to be leaders even amongst criticism. And I think we've gotten better. The game has gotten better because of that. And so if there are now a lot more resources to educate moms and parents and coaches and training and all those things. And so I'm glad that we're at a better place than we were, 7 years ago when I started this.
And coaching has changed too. If you could address that a little bit, even if it's from your own experience when you were at Gonzaga in DC during your high school career. I was just talking to someone yesterday, probably my age, around 60, who played at USC, was a starter there, and he was kind of joking with me. He said, "Do you remember when coaches wouldn't let you have water during two-a-days and all that?" So the safety issue also comes down to the coaches. How do you feel the coaches at the lower levels, at the roots of the game, are doing of passing on how the game should be played and to make it a safer game?
I think the coaches, that anytime you do anything for 30 years or 25 years or so, you don't do it because you did the same thing for 30 years. You did it because you evolved, you used innovation, you got smarter about how you educated yourself. And the job of a high school coach or youth coach is such a different job now. When you talk about background security checks, I mean, it's almost an HR manual of things you have to do, and it has nothing to do with football. And so you're leading young men and women. You want to make sure that the way they got up and got to practice, the way they go back home the same way, and good health and good fitness and all those things. But just from an X's and O's standpoint, we definitely have seen more of an athletic game. We've seen kids training at younger ages. You watch a game from 1995. Everyone's got the thick neck roll and the mesh jerseys, and it's kind of just downhill, 3 yards in a cloud of smoke, so to speak. But I think to see quarterbacks understanding concepts, looking at a pad and looking on the sidelines, understanding hand signals. I mean, that was something you only saw in the NFL. So now everyone is Andy Reid. Now everyone wants to. So you're seeing a lot of those things trickle down to the high school levels, and you're seeing in technology. We have technology on the sidelines. We have live video on the sidelines. I mean, you're seeing instant replay at the high school level in certain states. So those are things that are going to make the game better and better. And I think the game is in greatest shape as it's ever been.
And we've done a lot of interviews for Play Football. And by the way, folks, that's playfootball.nfl.com with a lot of guys from the league that are going and coaching at the high school level, which I know you love. I love it. That's another thing that's going to improve that coaching aspect at that level, right? And what are your thoughts in seeing the guys come down and go to the roots of the game in high school?
I love anytime a former player or a legend comes back, coaches at his high school, volunteers, even have some guys that are crazy enough to be head coaches at the high school level, deal with the parents, recruiting and all that stuff. But I think you have to humble yourself, because the game that I learned from high school, in the late 80s, early 90s, college, NFL, 96 to 2008, by the time my kids were 3-4 years old, the game had changed. You're seeing pistol formations at the high school level. You're seeing a lot of shotgun. You're seeing empty in high school. I didn't see that in high school. So any player that gets done playing and played long enough in my generation and then goes back and coach, that person is relearning the game in a different way, but he's still communicating the same values. He's still communicating the way you coach certain techniques, how to run specific routes, how to block the perimeter on sweeps. It's a lot of perimeter running now, not a lot of downhill stuff. So, I mean, you're a receiver. You got to hold that block for a long time if somebody's running a reverse or an end around. I mean, those are things that you have to relearn. And so from whatever it's from Pat Surtain Sr. to some of the guys that I know that have coached for that are coaching now, you're from the great state of Texas, where football's the fifth food group. And it's really commendable to see guys not only coaching and leading, but using these old school values and what they learned and then modernizing it. And adjusting and advancing to the new game that's being played now.
Yeah. And every coach that I've interviewed for you guys, I always ask the question, because we all know that coaches beg, borrow, and steal, right? There's no original play left out there. And you are a coach at St. Peter's right now. When you're coaching out there, do you have any of those old guys, whether it was your youth guys or your guys at the league level, that you kind of say, oh, I got a little bit of him in me?
I think there's a way that you can talk to kids now to get it out of them without degrading kids or threatening them and making them quit. That's the era that I grew up in, because it was a coach's job back then to toughen kids up because of what was going on at home or what wasn't going on at home or whatever that is. You almost had to use that motivation. And whether you're an urban kid, a farm boy, or somewhere in between, you almost had to use that motivation, and that was a part of the football education. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think you can still show a kid that you love them, that you care about them, that you want them to do well. Coach them hard. I still believe in that, but then let them see their own progression and take more equity. Just take more responsibility into ownership into what they need to do. And when you're talking about developing, a 290-pound 15-year-old who's going to play against Bosco and Bergen and all these schools that we play in, and you're playing against guys that are going to Ole Miss or going to Alabama, these types of schools. It's a different level of power and speed and explosion but the concepts are the same. The technique's the same. And whether you're coaching D3 athletes or a kid that can play at the larger levels, you're still coaching the same way. You're still dealing with the same things. And I think that's the beauty of especially the position that I coach, the lines in the interior. Quarterbacks and receivers got their own language, obviously. But I appreciate, the good things because the coaches that I had that were my favorite coaches in high school. Coach Jackson at Gonzaga High School, he's just and him and Coach Maddox just retired. I mean, I'm still scared of them. These guys are 70 years old. But I send them Christmas cards, wedding announcements, and let them know how I'm doing my career, and that's really the impact of a high school coach that you want to have over the long period of time.
One of my favorite things. And coaches no longer, as you said, are just coaches, right? They may be second fathers, some cases first fathers, and all that, which gets me to the next question. You kind of hinted at that. Your son DeAndre going to Purdue, he's given his verbal. He's playing there at St. Peter's. What's it like to be a dad that played in the NFL and has some kids that can play at the top level? How have you done with that? You handle it pretty well?
It's bad. I think I've had a support group of other players, like Pat Surtain, like some of those guys who have kids go through sports. I think the funny part is people expect you to be this wacko at the games because you play in the NFL and you're almost this fan comes out of you. People are always really surprised how calm you are because you're a parent first. And I think honestly, there's nothing worth ruining the relationship I have with my sons, RJ and Andre, when they're 25 years old, because of how hard on them when they were kids. Football's football, and I try to separate that from being a dad, but I think they have had to grow up with dealing with the burden of expectations. From the time they kicked their first T-ball or whatever, soccer ball, it was, oh, you're the son of the dad who played in the league. And so, I mean, I didn't know if I was coming or going when I was 5 years old, probably when I was 16. But I'm glad that, and I say this as a parent all the time, Jeff, is all you can do is get them to the bus stop on time. But at some point they got to buy in on their own, as a parent. And so I'm glad that they love the game enough to be passionate about it, to do well. I mean, they have the length and measurables and all that stuff. And I mean, my older son's a starter at Duke. He's a defensive end right now. And then my younger son is Andre, as I mentioned, is going to Purdue. I'm now the second biggest person in my house because he's a 300 pounder. But I'm just happy to be on that journey with him. But I think as parents, sometimes we have to know what's best for our kids, not just what's best for us. So you have to kind of know when to give and when to push back, when to listen, versus when to give the Newt Rodney, not Rodney motivational speech. So, but no, I'm really happy for them, and I'm just happy to be on the journey with them.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm sorry about that. I called him DeAndre. Somebody else in my brain when I said that.
There's a lot of DeAndres, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
You know what? And I've only asked this to a couple of coaches at all levels, but I want to throw it at you because I think you'll handle it well too. Because always getting lost in the mix, and I mentioned you were a husband at the beginning there too, right? Is the role that a wife plays. So I want you to talk really to the high school coach out there that may be in it for a while, maybe starting the importance of having that significant other that supports your dream and your passion, because obviously you as a player and now you as a coach, you need that, right? So can you spend a few minutes just talking about that and the importance of the coach knowing that, you got to keep it alive too, off the field and all that good stuff?
Yeah. I think the kids don't realize that you have a life outside of coaching them. And I would say to any coach that you've got to have the right wife or significant other, partner or what have you to coach and to dedicate your life to other people's kids. And it's very important because if your wife or spouse or significant other isn't as involved, then you'll have a lot of phone calls. When are you getting home? Another night of film? It's 10 o'clock. Where are you? I mean, you don't want that. You want, hey, what can I do? Can I order some donuts for the coaches? Can I get some coffee for them? I mean, that's what you want. And that's when you talk about a football family. I mean, that's what Linda is. I mean, she's an attorney and works for a firm, and she's very busy herself, but she calls herself a football wife and mom now. And I don't know, maybe the future mom of an NFL player. You never know. But I think it just starts with just having support, your husband and I think most of the good coaches that I know, everyone knows who their wife is. She's almost like an extra assistant coach. And then sometimes at some point, they're a little louder and scream a little bit more than the coaches do because they're mostly invested into these kids and they know their moms and their wives and stuff too. So, and the other coaches' wives rather. So I think it's great. And I'm really appreciative that honestly, that I'm able to serve a game that gave me more than I could ever give back. And the fact that I'm able to serve on this capacity and in a high administrative capacity that I don't take one day for granted when I wake up and come to my office and see all these great people that I work with on our staff and all the NFL teams and all the things that they're trying to do to kind of galvanize their community, whether you're in Minnesota area and you're trying to convert these hockey players to football guys, or you're in the state of Texas where you're playing football when you're 3-4 years old. So I think this is a great game and it's like no other. And I'm really glad and honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, a couple more questions. I'll let you run again. Thanks for your time. What a lot of people may not know about you, you're a pretty good shot putter there at Louisville, right? The question is, I'm assuming you're a big supporter of, multi-sport athlete. Is that the case? And then subsequent to that would be, how did the shot put help you as a football player?
Well, I'm a big proponent. Well, I'm from an era where one thing I do appreciate about the era I grew up in, you didn't have training all year long. You didn't have crazy 7-on-7s like starting in January as soon as the season was over. You're able to take your body and just compete in another sport, whether you're running track, you're wrestling. I didn't play football my freshman year in high school because my mom didn't know I missed the cutoff. So I showed up first day of school, the Tuesday after Labor Day, and the guys have been practicing football all summer. And I had no idea. I guess they were sending letters or whatever. My mom didn't pay attention, but I threw shot put first, and so I mean I was probably throwing close to 40 feet as a freshman, and about 100 feet in the discus. And by the time I left, I mean I was a 180 plus thrower and about 59 in the shot. And then one of the things that was going to Louisville, they said that they did spring football early, so I still had about a 5-week track season to go. And so they said, if you want to do that, go right ahead. We'd support you. And if you're going to miss a practice, we'd rather you not miss anything. But I made it work for me because it was something that was important to me. And I believe in it. And again, you're putting your body through something different. I think the musculoskeletal system hasn't changed. People talk about shocking your body, but you need to compete in other sports, number one. And you need to put your body through different types of trauma, different types of strength. So rotating and throwing a shot and then taking that explosion from the ground through your ankles, hips, and shoulders. I mean, that's like the momentum you generate when you're like popping, someone with a towel, like a wet towel, and when you goof around in the locker room. I mean, that's the type of power that you need. I still love watching shot and discus throwers and seeing these people throw that thing 200 feet. I think it's amazing, and that's why. I mean, actually, my older son RJ, he was ranked in the state indoor his senior year, is like 57 feet, and he threw like 170, almost 170 in discus. My younger son, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, he missed the spring, and then last year he didn't do outdoor because of recruiting, and we had to visit schools and some of those things.
Yeah.
So he's going to throw his senior year, and he's got goals to be a 50-footer and then hopefully 150 in discus. So we're also a shot put family and discus family besides just football. But I also triple jumped at Gonzaga. I was like a 41-foot triple jumper, which wasn't fun at 240 pounds with those shin splints. But I do believe in the coaches that can figure out a way to make it work with whether it's your lacrosse, your baseball, your track in the spring. I mean, some guys are good enough athletes that they hold a spot for them in basketball in the wintertime. I mean, you got to be a rare athlete to do that because these basketball guys play all summer, then they get ready for fall while you're playing football. So I support it 100%. Play multiple sports because you never know how all those sports can help you just become a better athlete. I always say build the athlete first and then the football player second.
Yeah. And last question, because I know you got to run here. And thank you for supporting my book as much as you have, saying you like the style of talking to, the NFL guys, their favorite high school memories and all that. So I got to, going away here, ask you, I know it's go Eagles. You reminded me today when I put out the rankings that you like seeing Gonzaga sit up there pretty high with St. Pete. So what was your favorite high school memory?
The first year that I played high school, I was on the JV team. I probably wasn't very good. I was on defense. I kept jumping off sides, and I think I eventually got benched. My sixth game of the season. But we won the JV championships. I still have that game ball. It's like a 1988 JV championships. All the signatures are all have a little signatures on it. And I mean, I think there's a purity of that part of my life. And if had I had a bad experience, had bad coaches that didn't know how to use me or know how to get me engaged, I may never have played after that year. And so I always appreciate that, playing JV. Marty Feverett was his name. He was the head coach of our JV team. And then obviously I went on and I thought I was at defensive end in high school. Then I got moved to offensive line. But again, coaches always know a little bit better than the parent and the athlete. But that's my favorite moment, winning the JV championships my first year playing football.
Yeah, and you've got the good memory there too. You didn't say it was the fifth game or the seventh. You had the sixth, so you must remember that, Roman. Thank you for taking the time. Thanks for all you do for the game and continued success growing this wonderful game. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much, Jeff. My pleasure. Anytime.